Ahoy, ladies and germs. We are doing an impromptu live stream out of nowhere. Mostly because I felt like I should do one, and the only times I had done one in the past couple of weeks, or more of like a month and a half, have been either if Daniel or Benjamin Dichter have been available. And I'm like, I'm allowed to do these by myself, so I should just jump on and talk about a bunch of topics that I haven't gotten to yet, or I've talked about them, but I don't want to dedicate like a 24-minute pre-recorded video to them. You kind of, I don't know, on YouTube you got to balance out what you're actually willing to talk about in a normal video and then what you're just going to put into a live stream, because it would seem too petty to talk about it in a standalone video, or it's just something that if you did it, the vast majority of viewers would be like, why are you talking about this and dedicating time to it? So that's why we are talking about Rachel Gilmore in this live stream, as well as some other left wing TikTokers. I'm not going to go over as many other videos, but we're going to talk about left wing TikTokers. And then I also want to go over just some fun Grok AI images, because I have this one AI image that's doing really well on X right now. If you saw it, I'm not sure if you guys follow me on X, but there was for some reason this did extremely well on X with 185,000 views of me just saying Canadian politics right now, and this lovely photo of Jagmeet Singh with Justin Trudeau on his back. Of course, it's still AI, so it's still a bit pretty janky, and for some reason, Jagmeet Singh looks like he's like a Hutterite, but we ignore these sorts of things when we're just trying to have a laugh. Wow, my first live stream. Well, good job, Brenda. It's a skill to even be around for a live stream with me, because I just kind of do it and then it happens and that's it. Even when here's how ridiculous I am. And Karen by the Rideau, yes, it is live now. But I'm terrible at live streams with other people. What I will do is I will schedule one, but in scheduling it sounds like, oh wow, it's so official. I scheduled it. Must be like ahead of time, so I schedule things like 30 minutes in advance. It's so bad. I am basically not even really doing any real organizing. That's my worst skill, is I'm terrible at organizing. Yeah. Rob Barkhouse thought this was a normal video, not a live. I usually always have a thumbnail on normal videos, and if I just randomly go live, it won't have a thumbnail. I'm not lazy enough most of the time to not have a thumbnail on my normal video. Uh, Angela Williams, Gilmore, poor woman's Southern. I assume you mean Rachel Gilmore is the poor man's Lauren Southern. Uh, she's like the Canadian version of Taylor Lorenz. Taylor Lorenz was going on an absolute tear down in the US, which demonstrates a lot of these people who work for mainstream media are not like mainstream people. Taylor Lorenz was like cheering on that healthcare CEO getting gunned down in the streets. And she's someone who used to work for the Washington Post. Working at a large publication doesn't mean you're not insane. Same thing with Rachel Gilmore, used to work for Global News. Obviously a nutcase. Just obviously hangs out with Antifa people, works for the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which, unlike its name, it is actually the pro-hate network. It just likes to direct hate at specific people. Karen by the Redu, where's Daniel? Not here. I believe he is still in Ottawa. Honestly, Daniel, I should do a video with him, or honestly, we should do a standalone pre-recorded video together, because he himself, like Rachel Gilmore, just testified or spoke in front of at least at an event at Ottawa on Parliament Hill regarding extremism in Canada. Not from the perspective that Rachel Gilmore talks about extremism, where she's like thinking the Russians are behind everything. Daniel's actually talking about like IRGC and ISI and other sort of Khalistani type extremists trying to take over the streets. Thank you. I will try and keep up my normally fairly mediocre type stuff. Who invited Rachel Gilmore to a committee? That's a good question, Lynn Brooks. Honestly, I think it's because of her connections with Canadian Anti-Hate Network that she must just get invited, because she sets up a lot of Liberal MPs with talking points. Do I think that any of the Liberal MPs are personally friends with Rachel Gilmore? I don't know. I think it's just that she's a hack and she's willing to say hacky things, unlike other witnesses who, have careers and integrity to uphold. Ugh, my collar is getting so sharp here. But yeah, other people have like careers and reputations to uphold, and Rachel Gilmore doesn't and is willing to show up and say that she's a victim of harassment and actually the Russians are trying to, turn Canadians against the liberals and Canadians would all like the liberals if it wasn't the Russians fooling around in Telegram chats. Yeah, it's and you are right, Lynn. An MP would have had to invite her. My point is, I don't think it really matters. I think there are enough people in the background who can pull strings to get a liberal MP to invite her. She's a fairly irrelevant person. And actually, before we get into the clip, and I'm going to be playing the clip from her own YouTube channel, so it's not like I'm pulling some sort of edit that makes her look bad. But before I get into the actual video of her in committee, I just want to show this, her TikTok. I don't use TikTok. If you have kids, don't let them use TikTok. Don't use TikTok yourself. I think it's just a really trashy site. But this is her on TikTok. She only has 100,300 followers. And that sounds like a lot, but you have to remember that TikTok, and this is with YouTube Shorts as well, any of these kind of shorts platforms are really inflated in terms of the viewership and your followers. Because if you sit down on like a bus going to work, or you're just sitting at lunch having your lunch break and you're watching a YouTube video, you will typically, if you're watching short ones, maybe watch two or three at most. If it's a longer one, you're going to watch one, even you might not even get through it. The problem with TikTok is that you will watch like 30 videos from TikTok, 50 videos from TikTok in a single day. That's probably low, like considering that probably kids at school are watching like 150 a day. So when you actually look at her viewership numbers I'm about to show you here, she has like zero viewership. Nobody gives a crap who Rachel Gilmore is. So her having an income, her not being like on the streets to just be kind of like hyperbolic about it, makes me think that she's probably paid by some political activist organization to put out activist type material. Because look at this. On all of her, this is a pinned video, so ignore that one. This one she just put up about her committee testimony, 26,200 views. And these go fast. They don't tend to get many views after the first day because things move so fast on TikTok. Here's her pulling a Taylor Lorenz and talking about why it's good to kill healthcare CEOs or whatever she's doing here. But look at all this stuff. Like only 32,000, 7,300, 23,000, 8,000, 6,000, 18,000, 4,000, 105,000. But all this is not even that impressive. The thing with TikTok, again, is there is so much view inflation. If you were trying to get what her numbers probably are, if you compared it to like YouTube, take whatever number she has and like divide it by 50, because there are so many people who are just watching for 2 seconds and flipping through. That counts as a view. If a video comes across your feed and you watch it for 2 seconds on TikTok, from what I know about TikTok, I don't have the app, that counts as a view, and you get like, and that's it. On YouTube, you have to be watching for like at least 10 seconds, at least 5 seconds or something like that to be actually considered a real view. And on YouTube, people have to voluntarily click on the video first. Unless autoplay is on, you have to have chosen to watch that video. And so that's where you can tell people like Rachel Gilmore are not actually popular. Nobody is watching this stuff. There's like 8,000 views, 23,000 views, 6,000 views. This is gutter numbers. Nobody cares. Anyways, and also she doesn't really upload all that much. Yeah. Angela Williams, poor man's Taylor Lorenz. Lol, that makes sense. Yes, because Taylor Lorenz is probably also a paid actor who just, posts content and targets people for like attacks and doxing in order to put pressure on somebody for some sort of left-wing organization. And I think that's probably the same thing for Rachel Gilmore. Like she recently sent a cease and desist or some sort of libel notice or whatever to the I guess I would call her a journalist, but the woman who she and her and her colleague go around filming protests in Toronto, Karima Saad, she was just like she sent a legal notice to Kareem Saad, and the law firm that Rachel Gilmore used was the exact same law firm that the Canadian Anti-Hate Network uses, and that doesn't technically mean anything conclusive, but I don't think that's a coincidence either from my professional, non-professional opinion. Anyways, but let's move on. There's a substantial amount of people here watching along. I want to get to and watch in detail Rachel Gilmore's testimony in committee. And again, this is her. Own YouTube channel. Isn't it kind of funny that she only has 4,670 subscribers? For some reason, someone who's been at this for a while, that seems oddly low for somebody who seems to be gainfully employed in her political activist position that she finds herself in. But I just want to quickly jump on this. And yeah, this is very much Light Givers foreshadowing us. She sounded like a Valley girl, so annoying. I assume that you meant so annoying with the O there. And it's like someone let her show up to this committee meeting after she just downed a bunch of Quaaludes. She was on lithium. She seemed high as a kite. I don't think she actually was. I think this is just a reflection of what her actual arrogant, self-satisfied personality is like when unleashed on the world. But here is her sitting in front of this committee talking about Russian interference and disinformation. Isn't that funny that we have a whole committee on Russian disinformation and interference when we don't have a similar one on Chinese interference? Or if we do, I have not seen it publicized very well.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is obviously a very important topic, and I have some big feelings about it.
What was that like weird kind of like look around the room? Like, I got some big feelings about it, guys. I'm a professional. I'm here to talk about Mr. Pooty Poot trying to interfere in our elections. This is someone who came to committee. This isn't like she made a TikTok video after it and she's being kind of silly before she shows the serious footage of her there. Guys, I got some big feels about Rachel Gilmore talking in front of this committee. It's this kind of TikTok voice, this metropolitan airhead kind of voice. It's horrifying. Yeah. I'll let it keep going, though. I'll try not to interrupt her too much.
So to kick things off, I'm sure you all remember the Freedom Convoy, yeah? Well, as part of my coverage at the time, I joined several Telegram channels and groups where organizers and supporters gathered to exchange everything from planning details to fringe conspiracy theories. And you might not have realized this, but it was actually just days after the convoy. Actually, you guys probably do know this. Just days after the convoy that Russia invaded Ukraine. So it was really...
Well, there was a connection there. I guarantee the Russians invaded because of the Freedom Convoy. See, it's actually the tail wagging the dog here. The Freedom Convoy happened, and then Putin realized it's his chance to invade Ukraine.
An interesting time to be monitoring all of those Telegram channels, because all of a sudden, the ones that have been posting about the convoy and COVID, groups with tens of thousands of members primed to distrust experts, government, media, and institutions, shifted to posting about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, often claiming that Russia's invasion...
She's having this weird look on her face every time she finishes a point.
About Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Where she does like this face, where she just like suddenly like looks at people like... And the thing is, again, why do you think that people distrust experts and the media and politicians right now? It's because of people like liberal politicians like Justin Trudeau. It's because of terrible journalists like Rachel Gilmore, who just decided to say that someone like James Topp was a white supremacist for no reason. James Topp is not. There are some people who are definitely white supremacists, white identitarians in Canada. I can name one for you right now. Jeremy Mackenzie. He's obviously a white identitarian, and I don't like that guy. The funny thing is, every time she would go after Jeremy Mackenzie, I actually, way back in the day, this video only has like 400 views, I was just calling out the fact that she was like fueling Jeremy Mackenzie's popularity by constantly talking about him. And because she's such a bag of garbage, that whenever she attacked Jeremy Mackenzie, people would like give Jeremy like the benefit of the doubt because like, well, he must be okay because Rachel Gilmore is attacking him. That's what happened on Ukraine. People like Justin Trudeau and so many other internationalist politicians have been so bad at their governing their own domestic, their own domestic issues, that when Russia invaded Ukraine, which I think is bad, which I obviously think is bad, I am actually very out of step with a lot of populist people online on this issue. I generally support Ukraine. I think that Canada's aid to Ukraine is completely worthless because we're sending them it's like when ISIS was killing people. We're sending them like winter coats and drones. We're not giving Ukraine anything useful. But people hate these politicians so much that they are willing to give Putin the benefit of the doubt, which is insane. Yeah. Why it's a Russian asset confirmed, as I just said that I like Ukraine. But anyways, I'll let her Rach keep going. But yeah, people are noticing the vocal fry a lot, where everything's kind of like this, and you throw the question mark at the end of everything you say.
Often claiming that Russia's invasion was actually justified because of reasons the government and the mainstream media won't tell you. This illustrates something that experts have said time and time again. Russia identifies the areas where we're most prone to polarization and pours gasoline on the fire that we already built ourselves. Don't just take my word for it, though. You can take it from Russia. In the documents the DOJ released in September in the US, we saw details from Russia's Good Old USA project and its guerrilla media campaign in the United States. Those documents show Russia identified existing sources of polarization to then exploit. The, quote, campaign topics they plan to focus on included stuff like what they called the, quote, threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, and, quote, risk of job loss for white Americans, and what they called, quote, privileges for people of color, perverts, and disabled. So that gives you a sense of the kinds of divisions Russia focused on exacerbating.
She's talking about they were trying to focus on areas where there was already division. They could pour more gasoline on the fire. I guarantee you that if there was there's no bigger source of division, of divisive rhetoric and like tactics than somebody like Rachel Gilmore and the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. She's quite literally doing what she is saying that Russia wants to do: divide Canadians by causing them to attack each other and demonize one another. Guess who was started to do it first? It was social justice warriors like Rachel Gilmore, who always attack people along racial lines, along class lines, along religious lines. She's awful. But yeah, my goodness. And the funny thing is, here's Rudimentary Gamer says, difference between her and Lauren Southern's testimony is wild. So it's really unfortunate Lauren isn't in the game anymore. Gilmore's just quoting random weirdos and bots. And that's the thing. So many of Rachel Gilmore's sources are anonymous Antifa accounts. Oftentimes, those people are not great people when they get exposed. They tend to be pretty awful. But it's not even I don't even fully agree with what Lauren Southern said in the committee. But the thing is, I think that Lauren Southern's genuine and everything she says. When I say I don't agree with everything she said, I mean, I agree with 95% of what she said. But that's the funny thing, is that Rachel Gilmore just feels like an actual bot herself. Why do you think she promotes bot accounts? She herself is borderline a bot. She is told probably what to say, what people to go after online, and all she is supposed to do is basically needle them, create attention around irrelevant cranks online, and then try and connect those cranks to real legitimate people. You will see Press Progress, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, the Progress Report, all of these anti-hate organizations. What they will do is go after someone who's legitimately insane, like Jeremy Mackenzie or some actual fringe conspiracy theorist, and then they will find pictures of them shaking hands with Polyev, who doesn't know who they are, or that they promoted this event that a conservative was at. And that's how they will then try and pretend that then a generic conservative like Michael Cooper or Pierre Polyev or Damian Kurek or Jamil Javani are somehow bad people, because they have played the game of 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon to prove that they're bad, because this guy knows a guy whose grandmother once rode in the car with this guy. It's obnoxious. Anyways, but I'll let her continue going here.
Got a lot in common with what I would call the right-wing grifter sphere and what comes out of there. where people rail against immigration, attack diversity and inclusion, pearl clutch about anti-white racism, and oppose trans rights. Diverse
I have to hear that again.
wing grifter sphere and what comes out of there.
Here's the thing. Never call anyone you disagree with a grifter. Calling anyone a grifter, and there are legitimate grifters around, calling someone a grifter is the worst rhetorical tactic you have. Because if you're saying that somebody's a grifter and they're beating you in a debate, what does that say about you that somebody who doesn't even believe what they're saying is doing better than you? That's pretty pathetic. If Rachel Gilmore is a grifter, she's a pretty bad one. I think that she's probably paid by an organization to amplify things, but she probably does seem at the IQ level who believes the things that she says at the same time. You'll find, too, people who are pathological liars, they will say something they know is a lie, but because in their own minds they're so arrogant that, of course, I never lie, they will then convince themselves of the thing that they knowingly lied about, and it's no longer a lie in their own heads, because I'd never lie. When would I ever say something that's wrong?
Where people rail against immigration, attack diversity and inclusion, pearl clutch about anti-white racism, and oppose trans rights. Like, those are the kinds of topics you hear from people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and Lauren Southern. And those are the same influencers who ended up on the payroll at Tenet Media, which Russia was allegedly funding to spread its talking points.
And I'll just cut to the chase here. Russia was definitely funding Tenet Media. It was people who were cutouts from Russia Today funding it. Bad. Lauren Chen is obviously, and her husband are obviously in hot water for that. I think it's nasty and terrible, but I don't think any of the other creators knew where the money was coming from, because obviously if you told any of these people who have a history of doing exposés on disinformation, you probably would have been called out if you told Lauren Southern or Tim Pool or Benny Johnson that they're getting the money from the Russians. But what she's saying here is that she's trying to say that she's trying to very weaselly connect being against DEI programs, which are in fact racist and divisive, with being Russian paid. Going after DEI and other sorts of left-wing policies, that is now Russian propaganda. So if you are against DEI, you are by definition Russian propagandized, even though we all have our own eyes and ears and can dislike DEI on its own terrible merits. Corey Starkiller. Tim Pool is a centrist. Honestly, I wouldn't say he's a centrist. I think that Tim Pool is more so just a populist. In fact, I think he was... Here's the thing. I don't even exactly like Tim Pool. I think he exposed himself recently arguing with James Lindsay on X, where Tim Pool legitimately sees issues as class-based at all times, that he sees himself as a hero of the working class and going against rich elites, which I always find very pretentious of Tim. I sometimes still watch his show, but I find that Tim is the type of guy where, again, the reason why Tenet Media probably wanted Tim or got Lauren Chen to promote Tim wasn't because Tim's going to be paid money and say Russian things. It's just that Tim Pool's a highly emotional type of commentator. So if he doesn't like Ukraine, he is going to go all out disliking Ukraine. And it is true, though, that the show that Tim Pool was doing for Tenet Media had nothing to do with foreign policy or politics in general. Is more of like a culture show. So it had to do with politics, but from the culture angle. The problem with people saying that, well, I was only paid for cultural stuff, so it probably had nothing to do with the Russians, is that the Russians probably wanted Tim Pool hired because they can promote Tim, grow his brand, and then hope that people from watching Tim eventually watch his anti-Ukraine stuff. That's how a fairly intelligent bank shot works when you're trying to do influence peddling. You never walk up to someone who doesn't actually, you would never walk up to someone who supports Ukraine and say, I'll give you $100,000 to start saying pro-Russia stuff. That's not a smart move. You don't even go up to people who are already anti-Ukraine and give them $100,000, say, keep being anti-Ukraine. What you do is you give them money, and incidentally, you just grow their brand, and their brand already is being anti-Ukraine. That's what I think was going on there. But again, Rachel Gilmore is way overreading this because it benefits her to overread this and pretend that every single one of these people were being paid for their opinions, in terms of they were being paid to shape their opinions in a more pro-Russian direction. That's not what happened. Lauren Southern, rightfully so, pointed out in committee that she never made a video mentioning Ukraine. She just talked about Canada. But yeah. But I'll move it. Yeah, yeah, I do like that. Donna M, the DEI, the Didn't Earn It program. Yeah, I agree. The one reason I can only watch so much of Tim Pool is that Tim Pool, as like ever saying, is very full of himself. There are a lot of creators out there who see themselves as the most pure people. John D says the establishment loves the war. I I don't think that's accurate. I never liked the whole this side's pro-war, this side's anti-war. You would be very hard pressed to find a pro-war side, especially in Canada. We don't even send them weapons. So people wanting to always use like, well, it's the military industrial complex in Canada wants to keep the war going. We give them nothing. We give them like drones made in China. We give them like winter coats and Snickers bars. There's nothing here other than Justin Trudeau wants to virtue signal in being in favor of Ukraine, even though he doesn't want to give them any useful supplies, because that would mean he would have to stop ruining our military. Because the reason why America can give Ukraine weapons and offensive like capabilities is because America actually has a military where they can give Ukraine their old stuff, so then American can buy their new stuff. In fact, Ukraine even has to buy that old stuff, so it doesn't even cost American taxpayers that much money in net. Canada, it costs us a lot of money to give them anything because we are literally taking Canadian tax dollars and burning them to have China, who is a Russian ally, then send Ukraine drones which have no offensive capability. They're like logistics drones. It's pathetic. But yeah, I would just say never use that talking point to people. You're never going to get away with saying that you're anti-war and I'm pro-peace. That's never how it works. Most people tend to be pretty pro-peace, and I just tend to reject those labels that this person's pro-war and this person's pro-peace. It's usually they have a different perspective on the war, some more functional and some less functional. I think that Trudeau's perspective on the war is dysfunctional. He's giving them no useful supplies, and he says that Ukraine should be supported until they take back all their territory. That's completely unrealistic, and we're not even supporting them in any way that would make that realistically possible.
If we accept the premise that Russia never influenced their editorial decisions, as these influencers claimed after the fact, that implies these folks are so good at dividing and polarizing Western society that Russia likely saw it as a good investment to just fund them to make more of their organic content. Yikes. When we indulge in divisive, conspiratorial, and often hateful rhetoric, we are doing Russia a favor.
I'm glad Rachel agrees. So calling random people white supremacists and claiming people are somehow Russian paid because they don't like DEI is insane.
Because a society that doesn't believe in institutions, in science, in journalism, in the validity of experts, in the value of taking care of each other and the importance of a shared reality is a society where democracy and stability is under threat. So a note to the politicians who use this same kind of divisive and conspiratorial rhetoric: consider what it means that Russia engages in the same tactics when it tries to undermine our democracy. Don't make it easier for them.
She is so satisfied with herself right now. Again, there's something about her, like she's on lithium or Quaaludes during this entire thing. I don't think she is. I disavow my own comment there. But like, my goodness, she can't sit still.
It's the same kind of divisive and conspiratorial rhetoric. Consider what it means that Russia engages in the same tactics when it tries to undermine our democracy. Don't make it easier for them. I want to touch on one last slightly boring but super important topic. When it comes to online disinformation, I want to emphasize the importance of taking action against Google's monopoly on digital ads. See, advertisers don't know where their ads go anymore. They take their ad spend, they give it to a company like Google, who says it'll reach, say, women aged 25 to 35 who want to buy a car. But it's actually very hard for advertisers to know where their ads end up.
I like John D's comment here. High inflection on the end of sentences. That's her. She keeps doing that, and it's so obnoxious.
Because Google and a bunch of middlemen place those ads for them. When an industry group tried to track this last year, 3% of the international digital ad spend, which is on track to hit $1 trillion next year, went to a, quote, unknown delta. That's billions of dollars. In the course of
Wow, 3% went towards an unknown delta. It's not even like it's bad. 3%, a rounding error, and she could say that's billions. But yeah, if we're talking about trillions, obviously a rounding error is going to be billions. A 3% of $1 trillion went towards stuff we don't even know what it went towards. I'm like, yeah, that's normal. That your ads are not going to be all accurately like targeted, because there are legitimately millions and billions of advertising slots all over the internet.
my reporting, I've seen ads for the US government mint placed on Iranian websites that are likely sanctioned. I've seen ads for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints on a porno website. Do you think those advertisers wanted to fund those websites?
What was Rachel Gilmore doing on a porno website? My goodness.
And do you think if they had the choice, they'd rather fund disinformation websites than actual journalism? But advertisers can't demand transparency on where all their ads actually go. They can't demand better from Google because it's the only game in town. Breaking up Google's monopoly and ensuring advertisers know what they're funding would be one incredibly effective way of ripping a profit motive from several disinformation websites.
So we're going to try and destroy Google because there is a small number of disinformation websites that are getting some advertising on them. Also, I don't know what that had to do with Mormons all of a sudden, that a bunch of Mormons are advertising on, like, P websites or whatever. What? The thing is that so we're going to destroy Google, and they don't have a monopoly. There are a lot of other advertising platforms that are growing. People, for some reason, have this idea that being big in an industry makes you a monopoly. It doesn't. A monopoly is something that controls the entire market and can prevent other players from getting involved with them. It doesn't mean that only one, I guess, but basically that there is a cartel that prevents other competitors from getting into the game, which only really ever happens because of government intervention. Yeah. Oh, so that's the obnoxious thing. But the thing is, I've never actually seen any of the footage of MPs questioning her. Honestly, it would be disappointing. I guarantee a lot of conservative MPs didn't want to challenge her on any of this because they are scared of being like, well, you're only challenging because you believe in Russian disinformation and you must be in favor of Russia. That's why I like people like Kareem Assad for going after nutcases like this, because people like this need to be called out because they are actually quite toxic. I don't want her censored, although she probably should be sued by certain people that she smeared. But it's that more people need to be aware of people like this who operate inside the media, on social media, who are just basically hitmen. They smear Canadians, they smear Canadian movements, they smear or they try and attack institutions in order to get left-wing goals pushed through. I want to actually jump over to some other stuff related to left-wing people. Trying to move some of this stuff. I'm trying to delete some of these overlays because I've had them up here for a while. But here is a good thing to remember. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network gets literally hundreds of thousands of dollars given to them by the Canadian government every year. And this Rachel Gilmore lady very likely works for them. And that's considered A-okay. Like giver, I would love competition against Google. And there already is competition against Google. Rumble is competition to them. DuckDuckGo is competition to them. Every other search engine is competition to Google. It all ends up eating up at least some of the market share. And a lot of this other stuff is becoming very popular as time goes on. They offer better service than Google. And I don't think, like, if there is any sort of Google monopoly, it's probably because of extremely harsh regulations and taxes that make it less likely that anyone else is going to join the search engine market or try and run, websites that have advertising on them, like YouTube. Like Twitch is run by Amazon. I'm not sure who runs Firefox. There's Bing, there's Yahoo still, there's DuckDuckGo. There's tons of the stuff. And even if they only have 1 or 2% of the market, that's 1 or 2% of the market. Rachel Gilmore was making a big deal about 3% of advertising, where the advertising is playing. It's like, you're obviously not going to know where every single advertisement is playing. That's absurd. But now I just kind of want to talk about left-wing TikTokers and whatnot in general. But maybe first we'll play one more video of Rachel Gilmore to really hammer home why this was so absurd that she was even allowed to talk in a committee. Not allowed to talk, but someone even bothered to call her in. So let's check out one of her videos from her TikTok channel.
Something very interesting. Hey guys, I have a big
Oh my
announcement
goodness.
and I hope you'll watch.
I'm trying to get the right one here.
Something very interesting just happened because of the guy who unalived the health insurance CEO. The grifters like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, who love to divide and enrage people who watch their videos, had their audiences turn on them. See, after United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was, a lot of people found it hard to have sympathy. I mean, U.S. federal judges just
Oh my goodness,
upheld
why
the
is he
law that
skipping?
could ban
He keeps
TikTok.
skipping, but I think you guys get the general point. I like how she's saying that Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro are grifters and they're trying to divide people. And then Rachel Gilmore's entire video is defending this Luigi guy who is a murderer who killed a healthcare company CEO for like malice and like being a malcontent. Uh, by the way, I guarantee anyone who thinks that it's okay to kill a healthcare CEO doesn't understand how the health insurance system works and doesn't even know that an organization like United Health runs on a 2 to 3% profit margin. It's insane. Mr. Doctor says Luigi was framed. I don't think he was framed at all, and I do not think he was the fall guy. He absolutely did kill that guy. I don't see what would the motivation in anyone else other than some malcontent would be to killing some random CEO. But yeah, this is what proves to me that she is discount Taylor Lorenz. All of these lefty socialist type social justice influencers suddenly find murder really cool because it killed somebody that they didn't like. All these people who talk about love and tolerance and put vocal fry in their voices and talks about how you don't understand the troubles of marginalized people. Don't care if you murder somebody. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, spam burger 2 to 3%. That is correct. Most healthcare companies only make about 2 to 3% profit every year. There are so many industries where you would be shocked at how little money they actually make. The problem with the healthcare industry in the United States is everything can be covered by insurance. When I say everything that can be covered by insurance, I mean the insurance companies are compelled to pay for so much that it completely ruins the insurance pool. And it makes it so like insurance companies pay for checkups and they pay for small prescriptions and they pay for casts and they pay for all this stuff. And you can buy insurance packages in more rational systems that cover those things. But the American insurance industry or the way it's regulated forces insurance companies to pay for all that stuff. And then because they're having to pay for everything is being paid by the insurance company, then it creates this really toxic game where the insurance company is then incentivized so they don't go bankrupt to argue every single case they can that they shouldn't have to pay for something. Because if they were to pay out for everything that insurance that they were required to pay out for, like basic checkups, which the patient should be paying for themselves. Your insurance company shouldn't be paying for checkups every year unless that's part of your deal because you pay more and so they'll cover a couple checkups a year or whatever. No, like the insurance company is having to pay for all this stuff. And so every time you might have gotten something at a hospital that isn't technically fully covered by your insurance, they're going to argue that they do not have to pay for it in order to keep that tiny margin of profit that they actually have. Showa says poor insurance companies. It's right, though. It's not that poor insurance companies. It's that poor America has a terrible insurance system, and it's bad for everybody but the government that gets to pretend that they're being very virtuous for forcing the insurance companies to pay for certain things in which it just makes everyone's coverage worse. That's basically how universal healthcare works. Everything is universally covered, and so because of that, they have to start rationing care because everyone comes in for healthcare, comes in to take money out of the pot that they did not put money into. And so then everyone has to start having care rationed. And also because it's free, people tend to use it disproportionately in terms of some people don't take out of it at all. And some people go into the doctor like 15 times a year. That's the problem. 2 to 3%, that guy was making millions a year. Well, in economies of scale, 2 to 3% still means that they might be making like $1 billion a year. And the guy was making like a couple million a year. The guy was not making like 40 million a year. That's not what he was doing. But yeah. Yes. Chris Johnson says, too many people, not enough contributors. And that's the same problem in the United States because doctors and hospitals have to see Medicare and Medicaid patients. We're just talking about US healthcare here, but they have to see Medicare and Medicaid patients for fixed reimbursement rates from the government, from Medicare and Medicaid. And they have to see a certain amount of Medicare patients per year if they actually want to be able to take their to be able to keep their licenses in certain cases, or in some cases they just won't see them, which means that they only can see other types of patients. But regardless, that means that doctors tend to and hospitals tend to have to charge people with normal insurance more money because these people are capped at how much they can give to the system. And so everyone else's private insurance plans then become more expensive and because of the higher like deductibles you have to pay and the higher bills that doctors charge people who aren't on Medicare and Medicaid, where they're not allowed to charge them anymore. That is actually the bigger issue. Wyatt, you get a better do your research on this company before commenting. You are wrong on this. I am absolutely not wrong on this. United Healthcare, I've heard, can be stingier than the other companies. The other companies are not much better, and it's not because the companies are run by evil individuals who want to deprive people of healthcare. It's because the system sucks, and there's not a lot of money in the system to be able to pay for all of the healthcare that they have to. But yeah, and like Canada's system still sucks more than the US, by the way. And here, I even did this today. I was having to defend Canadian Airlines on Twitter today because it is not. I just booked a flight to Vancouver today for the 19th, and I booked one of my flights on Flair Airlines. And Flair Airlines actually does the breakdown of how much you're having to pay for government services attached to to your plane ticket. And part of my Flair Airlines plane ticket, and this is after adding a carry-on bag and a checked bag, like 13% of my bill is government fees. It is having to pay for baggage handling. It's paying for security. It's paying a airport improvement fee and all this stuff. And that's 13%. That's also not counting the fact that corporations in Canada pay quite a bit of tax every year, and our personal income taxes are quite high, which also puts stress on things. Plus, there is also the carbon tax, which is just baked into your normal fee. And so at the end of the day, you're paying like 20 to 25% in just taxes when you take a flight in Canada. This is why airlines in Canada have a 1 to 5% profit margin. It's nothing. Grocery store chains are not gouging anyone. Their profit margin at the highest is 5% with Metro grocery stores, which is really funny because Jagmeet Singh always slams Loblaws, even though their profit margin, I believe, is like 3% or something like that. He never goes after Metro with their 5% profit margin, or it might even just be 4%. And they can make whatever profit margin they want, but he wouldn't attack Metro for the longest time because his brother Guratin Singh worked as a lobbyist for Metro. You almost can't make it up. Yeah. Mr. Doctor says Metro grocery stores doesn't even have good food. It's all slop. Well, I've never been to one. I'm not sure where I live, where Metro grocery stores actually are. But yeah, a lot of profit margins in all of these industries people end up attacking these businesses and whatnot. And are the businesses always scrupulous? No, I don't think that they always are. And it sounds like United Healthcare has probably done some slightly sleazy things in order to deny people. But like, guys, who's making them act like this? If they ended up not paying as much tax every year and the system wasn't so screwed, you would have way cheaper rates. Everyone would probably get easier access to healthcare and they wouldn't have to deny people nearly as often. Same thing in Canada with airlines. Same thing in Canada with grocery stores when they're saying people are being price gouged because prices are going up. Has nothing to do with grocery stores. Has to do with inflation and the fact that grocery stores are not charities and they must make some money at the end of the day, or why exist? Why put in all the effort to make like minimum wage or whatever as the person running this company? But yeah. James Taylor says Canada will get cheaper when our population grows. We are too big with too few people. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Because that wouldn't be my take at all. Light Giver, United Healthcare brought in $281 billion in 2023. Brian Thompson was paid $10 million in 2023. Wake up, Wyatt. What are you talking about? Are you talking about after taxes? Are you talking about revenues? I don't care. He was making $10 million. How much money would every single United Healthcare employee or insured person get if you split up his income? I don't give a crap that he makes money. It doesn't matter. Plus, the idea that we're now talking about this after a guy murdered the man is insane. That there are people so gormlessly stupid that they're going to suddenly wonder what his bank account looked like after somebody shot him to death. I don't give a crap. Yeah, nationalize nothing. I also agree with that. Light Giver, people are denied life-saving procedures. That literally happens in Canada far more often. And honestly, like, what are you talking about? What do you think that the company should always have to pay out? I'm not even saying that it doesn't happen in sleazy ways. It definitely does. But do you think that is a system issue or a United Healthcare issue? Do you think people would be using United Healthcare if they were notorious for being the one company in town who was doing this? They all do it because they all don't make a lot of money. And yeah, you can say, well, they made certain amount of $1 billion or whatever. But what was that in actual terms of profit margins? Because in massive companies with massive amounts of shareholders and people who have invested their own money to prop up the company, they're not going to do this for no money. They're not going to do this for fun. And a government has proven to be worse at delivering healthcare than private industry has. That's how, as Angela Williams is mentioning, that's how we get made in Canada. We just off people who become a burden to the system or suggest that they off themselves because we cannot afford, we don't have the money and the bandwidth to actually treat them. Don Larseri denied 32% of their claims. By far, United Healthcare denied the most. Bootlicker. Actually, okay, whatever. I guess there's a bunch of socialists are suddenly in the chat wanting to get mad. That's not 32% of their claims were not denied. They did not pay out 100% of what the claim was when it was submitted. They didn't just flat out deny 32% of claims. That's not how that works. Oh, but anyways. This is a thing I wanted to bring up. Ooh, wait, that's not it. Here is the thing I wanted to bring up. Oh, I closed something I didn't need to reopen. But here is this random thing I wanted to bring up about left-wing TikTokers when they go to YouTube. I've noticed that a lot of these guys are just not having a good time as soon as they try and go from really clicky type content on TikTok. So I've talked about Steve Boots in the past here, and this is his YouTube channel. I was just noticing, and it's a bit small on screen, but this is his last videos that he's made. The last 6 videos on his channel, all uploaded within the last 3 hours. I don't know why people do this. Every single one of them has less than 500 views. The biggest one only has 375 views, and some of these after 3 hours only have 65 views. I don't know why there are so many left-wing TikTokers trying to astroturf themselves onto YouTube this way, just jamming out videos with no rhyme or reason. Yeah. I want to bring up the Steve Boots's YouTube channel. Yeah, honestly, not all that interesting. But yeah, is there anything other people want to, anything anyone else want to talk about, or I might even start bringing up and just experimenting on Grok right now on what I can actually bring up here. Because Grok honestly got way better when it came to being able to generate images. it's gotten to the point where it can even like kind of recreate my face if I ask it to, just from enough I guess images of me being on the internet that I can put it together. Brenda Weeb says, so that's where all these new channels come from on my YouTube feed, lol. Well, a lot of these YouTubers, yeah, again, a lot of these TikTokers are trying to now move to YouTube, and I find that their style doesn't work out at all. And I think it's also just demonstrating that left-wing content is extremely unpopular. Steve Boots is honestly by far one of the most popular new left like creators who only talks about Canada, because there's a lot of left-wing creators in Canada, but they mostly talk about US politics, and I always find that annoying. You live in Canada and you're going to suddenly, it's not that you can't be an expert on politics in the US, obviously you can, but there are way too many people who then just start making only videos about the United States, and they got more than enough content to consume. They have more than enough creators making stuff. Heyo Time, Canada Rams fan, says, question, what's your opinion on when the election comes? Is spring in play, or do we have to wait till next fall? I think it's next fall. Everyone says spring, and honestly, every time conservatives talk about a spring election, it's because they're probably trying to fundraise and they want to create some urgency around people fundraising or giving money because, hey, give money before the year's out so you get your tax credit before the end of December for tax time. And also, we could have an election as soon as whenever like Singh gets his pension next year. I think he gets it like May or April or something like that. It was whenever the by-election was in Burnaby South when he had first run federally back in 2019. But no chance that we are going to be seeing an election until October, because the main reason, one, here's the two reasons that the NDP doesn't want an election. One, because Jagmeet Singh's stupid, so I guess I'll add three. So the first one's Jagmeet Singh sucks at politics. Two, the NDP are broke. Alex Zoltan on X has done a great breakdown on how, Alex Zoltan has done a great breakdown of how much debt the NDP still has on hand. They have not paid back all the debt they had from last election. They have cash on hand, but they still need to pay off all the debt they took out on the Leighton building. So that's one big thing, and their donations suck. I actually subscribe to the email list of the NDP federally because I just want to see what they're saying. And every email, every party asks you for money all the time, but I have never gotten more desperate calls for money than when I had subscribed to the NDP. They ask for money every 5 seconds. They will send out 3 donation emails in a single day. They will be hawking t-shirts saying, if you donate $30, we'll give you a t-shirt. Like, you can tell nobody wants to give money because they have to keep giving incentives to give money, which means that they're having to literally give away some of the money you're giving them in merchandise back just if you cut them a check. It's absolutely pathetic. So that's 2. The NDP are broke. Jagmeet Singh is stupid. So that's the 2 reasons so far. And the third reason is that most of the NDP MPs who qualify for a pension don't get them until October because they were elected back in 2019 exactly on that election. It wasn't in a by-election. So there's several NDP MPs who want their pensions and they have to wait until exactly in October. In fact, the Liberals had extended the voting day to make sure that they get their pensions because the voting day was actually scheduled a few days earlier than they would need to qualify for their pensions. So Jagmeet and Trudeau negotiated in order to shove the election a little bit further down in order so that these people would automatically get their pensions without having to win another re-election. It's absolutely pathetic, but what can you expect from the NDP? Anything interesting in BC politics at Sherwood quiet after this election? Sure was quiet after this election, is I assume what you meant. Yeah, it has been, and it's because David Eby isn't having the legislature meet again. So naturally, everything's slowed down a lot. There was this one controversy in the BC Conservative Caucus because there was that one woman who was on the BC Police Board, Comfort something or other. She's a Baptist Christian who was on the police board, and she said something ironically as a black lady was saying that, well, and when I say ironically, ironic in the left going after her so hard, she was talking about the problem with many minority communities in Canada is they just do not have Western values. They have religious values that are very counter to everyone else. And so it's been making it hard to integrate and assimilate together. And that was considered across the line. So they pressured her to resign. And then Eleanor Sturko, one of the BC Conservative MLAs, frankly, just needled her for no reason. I don't know why she did. And now she's like refusing to apologize after some of her MLAs, like her fellow MLAs, said that she should apologize, which I think I agree. I'm not somebody who needs politicians to apologize for everything, single little thing they do. But I think that was particularly uncalled for, and it would have probably been good if she said, I got the situation wrong. I'm sorry. Ray says, Boots would get along swimmingly with Henry Garreau. I have no doubt he's familiar with Garreau. I actually don't know who that is, the Henry Garreau guy. Okay, so thank you, Joni Skrog, Skarg, or whatever. I cannot pronounce last name, sorry. But yeah, no, sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Jagmeet Singh gets his pension on February 25th. He should sell his Maserati. Used cars are worth a lot right now. Less now because I think there are more chips. But that's the. But I'm not even sure if it's his Maserati. I will mention the pension sometimes. I don't think that Singh is motivated by his own pension. I think he's already a millionaire. He doesn't need it. And even then, you don't get your pension until you turn a certain age. So he would just be waiting for like a decade or more to be able to actually start paying out his pension to himself. I think Jagmeet Singh is mostly motivated to stay on camera. He really likes attention from elite media, and so wants to just stay in the game as long as possible. my ladies and germs opening made you chuckle. Well, good, because that was trying to keep it light here. Although I'll get mad at people every once in a while if they like talk about killing CEOs. But whatever. I'm trying to keep going down. Sorry, the Mysterious Star said actually the election day change was canceled. I thought they canceled it, and then in the last week they just reinstated the change, or something like that happened. BL says, will there be a Wyatt versus Steve Boots debate? No, simply because I think debates are stupid, and I'm not sure if he'd ever want to debate me anyways. Debates so often devolve into, at least with unreasonable people I find online, it turns into my favorite political philosopher could beat up your dad. My dad could beat up your dad. A lot of it is just not good in the sense that it's just people pulling rhetorical tricks on each other constantly without never actually having a real point. Mr. Doctor, Wyatt X Harrison Faulkner collab when? Me and Harrison don't agree on, honestly, all that much. He is very much what I describe as a paleo conservative. He's somebody who's skeptical about free trade. He's somebody who's skeptical about foreign policy, more active foreign policy. I'm more hawkish when it comes to foreign policy. So, yeah, like, I'm not sure. Everyone, like the other day, he was talking about what the PPC needs to do to improve, and I noticed that he wouldn't lay a glove on the PPC in terms of being incompetent. So I'm wondering if he wants them to see him more as like a guiding light. I don't know. But yeah, he all says, great internet debate, Wyatt in the right corner in the blue suit versus Steve Boots in the red shirt. Yeah. Yeah, I think that he probably wouldn't generally change his appearance or his attire very much if I was to debate Steve Boots. But I think Harrison's a pretty talented guy. I just thought when he put out that video saying that the conservatives and the liberals were the exact same on the issues of immigration, foreign policy, and trade, I was like, they're just not. They are just not. On immigration, they are a little bit closer. And that's something I'll be critical of the Conservative Party on. They need to come out with a number on what they need. They need to come out with a number on how many immigrants we need to be capped at. I think 100,000 permanent residents per year for 10 years is a good cap. And I would also frankly, visa issues for both like issuing rates for visas, both student visas as well as work visas by 80%. And then anyone who overstays a visa obviously needs to be moved out. I think that yeah, like we need to deport people who overstay visas. Obvious thing, we can easily clear 3 million people out of the country who have temporary visas pretty quickly, and it will help the both, I think, the housing market as well as the culture. Because obviously, it hurts your culture to have people around who don't really want to be here. They're here to work a job or to get a degree, and that's it. And it's really toxic when you realize there's so many people who are temporary students who end up taking part in all these Hamas protests and whatnot. Bit LB says, explain hawkish on foreign policy, please. That would be like the whole peace through strength type position. Frankly, Donald Trump is way more hawkish than people know. Being hawkish doesn't mean starting wars and being a warmonger. Being hawkish means that if Iran messes around or if Iran tries to make a nuclear like weapon, you hit them hard. If they try and take your people hostage, you hit them hard. You sanction countries that end up trying to invade others. You sometimes have to support allies. It's something like that. The problem with if you're saying those countries are of no concern to me, they're not in our country, they aren't our citizens, so I should never care, is that eventually they will start doing things that end up affecting you. And you don't want to fight them when they're on your shore. You want to fight them back when it's much easier and it's a much more remote problem. Because I find that if you just say, no, it's not it's not our problem. It's on the other side of the earth, is that eventually they will find their way to your side of the earth. Not that you have to get involved in everything. There are so many foreign interventions that have been completely stupid. If you get involved in one, you got to finish it. You can't do what America's been doing over the past 2 decades. You get into Iraq and then you pull out. You get into Afghanistan and then you pull out. You get into Libya and then you pull out. All this has been like a disaster. Either you get in and you make sure to finish the job and you do it hard and fast, or you just don't get involved because you're going to probably make it worse and you don't know what you're doing. Lane Train, what are your thoughts on JJ McCullough? I generally like JJ McCullough. His culture videos and his explanations of Canadian politics are very good, even though I would disagree with him on a lot of social issues. And sometimes I find that what I would call him, I don't mean this in a bad way, I just mean this in like I'm trying to dissect the way he thinks. He's an aesthetic moderate, so he really doesn't like Trump. And I think it's because Trump, in his mind's eye, is not normal. Even though Kamala Harris was way more arguable as the not normal radical candidate, Trump is a very, in a lot of ways, middle of the road conservative on many issues. He is a classic Reagan Goldwater type conservative. And so I think it's just his wild behavior that throws JJ off, and he cannot connect with him at all, and he hates him. And JJ, I find, is very concerned about kind of keeping in that mindset of wanting to be a normal middle class person. And so he cannot, he does not like Trump, and he does not like what Trump does conservatism because it stops making it normal suburban middle class. He's not normal. He's not a normal and suburban middle class type candidate to support. And I'm not going to say as much because I want to jump down to this first. R. Watinsky says, do you think JJ is a conservative? I do. I think his temperament is a conservative. I think he's more, not like a red Tory, because he would probably be fairly fiscally conservative. I would say he is a progressive conservative in the traditional sense. He is more socially liberal, if not progressive, and then on fiscal issues, he is conservative. But even then, he still has a skepticism of lefty activist types. So it's hard to kind of get a reading on him on certain issues. Like ever, close our borders now. No more immigration until Canadians get their jobs back. Honestly, here's the thing. I don't think you want zero immigration. Not only for a marketing standpoint, that a middle class lady is not going to want to hear someone talking about zero immigration. We can't have any more immigration, blah, blah. Because anything that, it's not even an extreme position, because I understand where you're coming from. Immigration's been so high for so long. It's like a piece of rubber that's bent this way and it's just leaning that way now. And to get it straight, you got to bend it back the other way. I generally agree. I'd have a cap of 100,000, but I'd also have a means test, a skills test, and a values test. that you can only come if we need somebody with your skills to fill a job that there's just not a Canadian even available to take that job. You have to have the right values. So we would do a background check, make sure that, you're not wanted for crimes, that it's not a foreign government trying to dump you off in our country because you don't have skills or because you're some radical, because that happens a lot. We have ISIS fighters that came home and for some reason we embrace them. We have Khalistanis who show up all the time. We have radical environmental activists from other countries who come and try and block our resource development projects. But I would say that also the best way of getting Canadians their jobs back not only is reducing the amount of temporary foreign workers, that's part of it. Another part is just lowering taxes. It is the solution to so many problems. Lower taxes, stop useless government spending. A lot of people who, for some reason, don't like JJ McCullough. I think he's fine. Go watch his videos. They're fun. You don't have to agree with all of his takes. And sometimes I find he wrongly defines like trans rights as like special privileges. You have Canadian rights. You don't need any more. But I think he's very susceptible to believing mainstream things because he wants to stay mainstream. Not that he's literally thinking I want to stay mainstream, but he's put off by anything that feels not mainstream as like a gut instinct level. And so he will sometimes say things I don't think he actually believes if you were to interrogate the issue more. So he'll talk about how there are certain people who oppose gay and trans rights. But I think if you talk to him, he would know that they don't actually oppose them. Mike Muzzle says Harrison has a unique perspective, and I would agree. I think Harrison has unique perspective, and I appreciate that he can articulate it decently well. Even though in that video where he's saying that the conservatives and liberals are the same on those three issues, I just flat out disagree, especially on foreign policy. Do you think that the conservatives and the liberals are similar on foreign policy? Do you think they're even similar on trade and the economy? It's not even exactly right to say they're the same on trade because trade is an economic issue and you can't detach trade policy from domestic economic policy, because you could have the exact same policy on trade, but if one government wants to reduce corporate taxes and personal income taxes and regulations and try and drive American jobs into Canada by being the better place to set up shop, I would consider that a different perspective than the liberals who have the same trade policy but want to keep taxes high, and that's what's causing jobs to go down to the US. Wyatt joining the military arc when? I always find this annoying. I know you're kidding, but I always find that annoying whenever people are like, oh, so you're in favor of more active foreign policy? When are you joining the military? It's like, do you like border security? And I'm mostly talking about Americans here. Like, you like border security? Well, you don't want to join ICE. Well, I guess you don't take border security very seriously, but yeah. Corey Stalker says, I wish JJ would hold still in his videos. To be fair, I move around a lot in my videos sometimes too. I have this like train station banker's chair here, but yeah, he has that like rubber ball or that exercise ball he bounces up and down on. I, for the longest time, was stupid enough. I didn't even realize he was sitting on one. I thought he was just kind of naturally like squirming a lot. Hallie Mullen says politicians and war is money laundering. Here's the thing. People need to look into legitimately how little money like defense contractors actually spend on lobbying compared to other lobbies. It's honestly not exactly a lobby that spends so much money. Oh my goodness, everyone's being bought off. They spend less money than unions. They spend less money than pharmaceutical companies. They spend less money than mining companies, energy companies, green energy companies. You could go through the list. It's honestly not nearly as profitable and big of an industry as people think it is. It's just one of those narratives where it feels like, well, there's a war going on. How else could the politicians be in favor of this war other than being paid? It's like they're just genuinely not. They probably just genuinely think it was a good idea. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. And that honestly is the biggest red pill in politics. Sometimes establishment politicians are right about something, and oftentimes they are also wrong, but they can be right. And just because somebody's an establishment politician does not mean that they're particularly wrong. They might be doing some things right and they know what they're talking about sometimes. And that's what we always have to know, is that politics is really, when I say dirty, I don't mean in the corrupt sense, although in Canada it definitely is. but it's dirty in the sense it's really hard to see why people are doing what they do from a 50,000-foot view. Honestly, a channel I recommend a lot is Stephen Michael Davis. I don't agree with Stephen Michael Davis on everything. Definitely don't agree with him on everything, but his takes on politics are very good. I find if you watch him, you will find that I think he does a good job of describing how politics actually works. So I will just quickly link a video. You guys can watch after the stream or watch it right now if you want. And it's a video entitled "Corruption is Just Politics We Don't Like." And he's talking about progressives going after John Fetterman because he's now an Israel shill, and people saying that he's taking money from AIPAC and all these organizations. He's never taken a dime from them. And that people often find that somebody who disagrees with them is probably doing it because they're being paid. And it's like, honestly, probably not. There are some politicians who are that unscrupulous, and I could name some. But for the most part, I would say that's just not really the problem. Yeah, Spamberger says cut all BS spending. Yes, and I would even say a lot of foreign aid spending needs to be cut. People also overestimate how much foreign aid spending actually is. Foreign aid spending is still an absolute drop in the bucket in terms of Canada's debt problems, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be cutting that spending. I find all bad spending should be cut, and it's an absolute tragedy whenever people look at it and say, well, it's only $7 million a year. In Alberta, right now, under Danielle Smith's UCP government, every single year we spend money on the Black Albertans Advisory Council. We spend $7 million a year on the anti-racism grant program. We spend another $12 million on the multiculturalism and diversity program, the grant program. Why? Well, it's not that much money, Wyatt. How many people could you hire? How many cops could you hire for $7 million to patrol C train lines in Calgary and Edmonton? You could easily hire like several dozen cops to end up cracking down on crime and reducing the crime rate heavily. It's crazy. But yeah. But I'll link that video one more time if you guys want to go and like save it for later to watch. Oh, that's a good endorsement. R. Watinsky. I'm actually American and I enjoy your videos. Never really cared for Canada politics until Trudeau started becoming a dictator. And I watch videos from other countries in terms of people talking about politics from other countries. Even though I don't always agree with them, the podcast of the Lotus Eaters is really good for following what's going on in the United Kingdom. And of course, as a Canadian, everyone from other countries watches American politics. And I watch people like Richard Barris, sometimes Stephen Crowder, Ben Shapiro. Actual Justice Warrior is also a great channel, especially on the issue of crime. I wrote my entire master's research paper based on things that I had learned and kind of become interested in from Sean Fitzgerald from Actual Justice Warrior. He's very, very good. What are your thoughts on looking at Canadian civilization through the lens of class? I dislike looking at any problem through the perspective of groups and categories. I think that everything should always be viewed from the individual's perspective or the overall societal culture rather than from the group level. How is things affecting this group? I want everyone to do better at all times. And so I'd only ever pass policies that do better for everybody. Every single time you start picking winners and losers, even though a certain group seems like it's worth making them winners at the expense of another group because these people are not as well off as these people or these people, because this is the same thing that the left does. They started out with class warfare back in the early, socialist era of the 20s and 30s. And then when that didn't work in the West, like James Lindsay and other thinkers have pointed out, that's when they started moving on to race. But class has always been a dividing line that I've never really liked. Kino Casino. I think I've heard of it. I've never watched them. Watch Ryan Macbeth videos. I will go check him out, Mr. Salty. I will go check that out. Uh, yes, James Taylor, right. Most Canadians confuse our politics with American politics, and we are very, very different. You are right. I hate how people will try and pretend like American political issues are Canadian political issues, even if I think it should be a Canadian political issue. Like every time people start talking about abortion in Canada, people talk about abortion as if we're like Texas and that the conservatives are going to ban it like overnight. That's just not what's going on at all. Canada has the laxest laws on abortion because we don't have any laws. We are like weird considered to the rest of the world. Every time people find out we don't have laws, I find that it really churns their stomach and they're like, that's insane. BL, man's got a water addiction. I'm trying to drink more water. I drink way too much sugar and caffeine in a day, or like sugar-free drinks that I never actually drink water in a week. It's crazy. Yeah, no. And the thing is, here's a good point from Ray. Ray Fetterman recently spoke about the criminal justice system being weaponized against Trump. It's not even a secret anymore, albeit it was a poorly kept secret before. Yeah, it was more so people were just gaslighting others into thinking Trump's not being specifically targeted. He broke a law and we have to enforce the law. And they're like enforcing laws on Trump that have never been enforced against anybody. Like that one in New York that he got convicted of. And I think it's been overturned since then, or at least it's been delayed, where it was the Juan Merchant. I believe it was the Juan Merchant case, that judge, which just ruled against Trump from the start and said that he was manipulating the price of his real estate, which everyone does. Who, when they're paying taxes on a building for property taxes, is going to say, oh, yeah, they're going to inflate their value on when they're paying taxes, and then they're going to deflate the value when they're selling it. Obviously, you're always going to inflate the value of something when you're selling it because you want the most money. And when you're paying taxes, you're going to be more like, you're going to be more down on your own properties because you don't want to pay taxes. But Fetterman, even as a progressive, who on economic issues, I would disagree with him. On a lot of foreign policy issues, I'd agree with him, I guess. But a lot of issues, I probably wouldn't agree with him. But he's just a reasonable guy. Insert joke about head trauma making, recovering from head trauma, making somebody more conservative over time. Like Giver, I have sleepless nights after watching committee meetings, seeing how many billions have been stolen from us. No punishment. Yeah, it's kind of nuts how desensitized Canadians have gotten to scandals. Any one of these liberal scandals, without exaggeration, would have sunk a previous government. The sponsorship scandal from the Chrétien Paul Martin days was like a few $1 million. It was like $5-10 million. I'm not sure what the exact number was. It was basically nothing. They spent so little on the sponsorship scandal, and that was like a government ruining scandal. Not like everyone started resigning and getting investigated, but the polls turned on them. And that's really the main way of punishing politicians. It's kicking them out of office and making sure they never get back in. I don't exactly want to endorse that every time some corrupt thing happens, then suddenly the police kick down the doors and start arresting everybody, because, I could see how that could be perverted in a different way of finding excuses to investigate people so that they get arrested, because that's basically what they tried to do against Trump over fake crimes. But it's nuts though that like We Charity, SNC, we have this Green Slush Fund, the Sustainable Development Technology Corporation, that is the Green Slush Fund. We have all of the vacations of Trudeau, basically taking millions of dollars in free vacations from people trying to influence him fairly obviously, and all this has never actually hurt him that much. Like, he's down in the dumps now. Honestly, it was the economy that got him, I think. It was the economy, and I think some of the crazy social policies. Social policies turned off a lot of minority communities that are very socially conservative. And I think that as well, I think his just self-satisfaction and smug disconcert for Canadians has also just turned people off. But it wasn't the scandals, oddly enough, not the scandals at all. Wyatt, what's your, this is from Genghis Tron, I like the name. What's your take on electoral landscape of southwestern Ontario, London specifically? Well, I think that Andrew Lawton's easily going to get elected in the Elgin area. If you're talking about London and that area in southwestern Ontario, there's not much to say federally. I think it's all going to go blue, pretty much, unless there's a riding out there that I'm completely unaware of that has a good chance of going Liberal or NDP. And I think even the one green seat's basically going to get absolutely destroyed in this next election because that was a fluke win because of a Liberal candidate dropping out. And then a lot of Liberal voters, probably out of spite for the Conservatives and the NDP, voted the Green so that one of those parties wouldn't get it. For provincial politics, though, I hope that the new Blue Party can develop themselves out there a little bit more, really hit the doors, get people to know them a little bit more. I think that provincially, if you guys are in Ontario, vote New Blue provincially. Doug Ford needs a strong corrective force. And the thing is that I've never argued against the PPC federally as a force for bad. I just kind of make fun of them for doing politics wrong, that they're bad at connecting with voters, that their first instinct is always to project hardcoreness before actually getting people to agree with them. The new Blue Party is doing it right. They actually are courting middle-class people, and in by-elections, they've actually been growing their vote since the 22 provincial election, and they only had about a year to organize before that one. They had less time than BC Conservatives, and they actually got like 2.7% of the vote, which is decently impressive for a brand new party. And Jim Karahalios, the leader, was literally recovering from like the cancer that killed Terry Fox during it. That guy was having like every issue under the sun, and then he even had other small third parties prop up who were, in my opinion, obviously funded by Ford insiders trying to basically throw off the third party scene. This happens a lot in Canadian politics. You discredit new upstart parties by funding other new upstart parties to make the entire third party area look ridiculous and overpacked and all that. Corey Stalker, the Lotus Eaters are seething over James Lindsay again, and I think they're wrong, and that's the thing. I like Lotus Eaters oftentimes. They're wrong about James Lindsay. The woke right is absolutely a thing, and I think a great idea of who the woke right is in Canada would be like people like that guy who attacked me the other day, Greg Wycliffe, or Jeremy McKenzie is part of the woke right. People who believe that classical liberalism has failed. And classical liberalism is not like Justin Trudeau liberalism. It's like Scottish traditional liberal conservatism. It's the idea that, we have free markets, we have individual rights, we have neutral courts, we have blind justice, we have legal equality, all this stuff. That is now considered bad because, it's caused so many bad things to happen in Canada. I'm like, guys, the problems of Canada and the United States and the UK and all these other countries in the West is not classical liberalism. It's modern liberalism and it's woke Marxism. And then developing a conservative alternative version of wokeism where instead of society secretly being racist and secretly being sexist and patriarchal and all this stuff, it's actually anti-white and it's anti-Christian. And there are many people who are anti-Christian who are in politics and whatnot on the left, obviously. But don't start then collectivizing around these things the way that the left does around minority identities and queerness and all this stuff, and do it in reverse, or you're going to have the exact same stupid problems. I hate that sort of stuff. I am in favor of individualism, of the family unit, of all this stuff. I like the Christian national stuff is stupid, and it's like you're falling for a very obvious psyop, honestly. Do you like trigonometry? I like trigonometry more as time goes on. Badalid. I cannot pronounce your screen name. Bitbalidi. There you go. That's my best guess. I like OG Crowder with not gay Jared, but Steven has disappointed the last few years. Here, Steven Crowder used to be like really good, and then he got really bad, and now he's kind of doing better, a little bit better again. At one point, like, I don't like it when he used to swear less, and that's when he was better. I find when you lean on swearing too much as a comedian, it usually means your jokes weren't that good. But I'll watch Steven Crowder. When I say watch him, I mean, like, I'll watch him, like, once per 2 weeks. Yeah, Sean, Northern Perspective is really informative of this corrupt government. Yeah, they do really deep dives on specific issues. They actually gained a lot of subscribers because I think they did such good investigative work on the Green Slush Fund that there were like people subscribing all over the place to kind of keep up with the story. They don't have that story to talk about as much anymore because it's kind of a little played out. But since then, they've still been doing decent commentary that's in depth. Corey Stalker, I think Wyatt and Frank Vaughn would have a great live stream. Yeah, I'd love to have Frank Vaughn on at some point. We're really decent friends with each other. Thoughts on the poll showing the PQ winning the next Quebec provincial election in 2026, how the Conservative government would reject a third referendum. I don't even think the Parti Québécois provincially would even go for a referendum. Honestly, if a Conservative government gets in and they start cutting taxes and everything starts getting better, a lot of Quebecers aren't going to put up with another referendum when there really isn't a good reason to do it. And frankly, there wasn't a good reason to do it in the first place. If you're looking at a lot of the sources of economic and social problems in Canada, look at Quebec. Look at the political nihilism of Quebec. Look at the incredible welfare state that they have that Canadians pay for. No offense to Quebec, I guess. If you have the opportunity, I get why they do it, because a lot of other provinces, if they were allowed to rip off the rest of the country, would probably go for it. But yeah, a lot of political nihilism has come out of Quebec in terms of left-wing woke culture has emanated from there. Pookie5587, thank you for the $2 super chat. Fellow Albertan, did you see Trudeau Q&A at the NS chamber? I think the national security. Are you talking about that? I assume if you're talking about the national security thing, I've watched parts of it. I didn't watch much of it. I actually want to do a full video at some point on that stupid CBC article about Patrick Brown's campaign being derailed by the Indian government. It wasn't. Patrick Brown just testified, and he said that Michelle Rempel said that she got a call from an Indian consulate general, but they weren't trying to undermine Patrick Brown. I think this sounds like somebody who knows Michelle Rempel calls her up, and they have concerns about crazy crap that Patrick Brown has talked about and his pandering to Khalistanis, in which I think that people at the Indian consulate should not give any politicians any calls regarding Canadian domestic politics unless it has to do very directly with India. But still, that's not exactly interference. And we had a breathless article from the CBC, 2,400 words, on this anonymous source saying that, did you know the Indian government helped out Polyev to win the leadership race? No, they did not. They were going to... Polyev was going to win all along, and Patrick Brown wasn't going to win. And Patrick Brown is a famous political fraudster. Remember when he was the PC leader in Ontario? Do you remember all the ballot box stuffing? And now the CBC is crying over Patrick Brown being kicked out of that leadership race while he was selling a suspicious amount of new memberships. And I heard it was often on prepaid credit cards. BL, Star Wars, or Star Trek, real talk. Depends on the Star Trek. For movies, new Star Trek movies, I don't like them. I like older Star Trek shows. I actually haven't watched any of the movies. I like Next Generation. I don't watch any original Star Trek. Original Star Wars is good. The prequels are not bad, and the sequels are horrible. So I think Star Wars is the far more embarrassing series, even though there is a lot of bad stuff on there. Lane Train, thoughts on Derek Sloan and the Ontario Party. Derek Sloan and the Ontario Party, I believe, are getting money from Doug Ford allies to run the Ontario Party to merely split the vote between the alternative party scene. This is a real case of vote splitting. Oftentimes, vote splitting is overhyped. Oftentimes, it's just someone chose to vote for another party and they wouldn't have voted for you otherwise. I think the Ontario Party was merely in the race to try and sidetrack the New Blue Party. Because since the Ontario Party's run in 2022, and they were also ran the 2018 election, but they only ran 7 candidates. They ran kind of 2/3 of candidates in most of the ridings in the 22 election, where the New Blue Party ran a candidate every single riding, but one of them had to drop out, but effectively every single riding. The Ontario Party, again, it just seems like it's there to make the entire third party group look disorganized and like they don't know what they're doing. And then there was even the Populist Party of Ontario also running. All these ones know that they're not doing anything, that they don't have a chance of winning, but they just run a bunch of candidates and they pretend oh no, I'm running in good faith. When as soon as that election ended, the Ontario Party didn't even get its election filings done in time. Obviously, they're not serious. Um, will there be a how to door knock video? I actually just did a seminar for a municipal party in Calgary on door knocking tips, especially because they're going to have nominations, and I was talking about how best to door knock for nominations, because door knocking in nominations is way different than a general election, because you need to give the people way more information and have to sell them a membership so they can even vote for you. Light Giver, who is James Lindsay? I would say he is the foremost expert on woke politics in North America, in the West, talking about where woke politics on the left come from. And he's also warning against new woke style politics developing on the right that he doesn't like. And woke politics on the right, it's still small. It's way smaller than woke politics on the left, but it bears being called out because I think it's toxic over time. Yeah, I agree. Craig, CC, Andrew Lawton will likely clear 60% of the vote in Eldon, St. Martin, or St. Thomas, London South, I believe is the riding. Haley Mullins, FYI, all 338 MPs are installed and corrupt. I disagree. I think oftentimes, again, like that Stephen Michael Davis video I sent you, I think most people, I think you could say that a lot of MPs are corrupt in the sense that they only do what their leader says and that's it. But that Stephen Michael Davis does a good job of explaining, I think half the time, Trudeau's corrupt, but I think most of his policy decisions are based on the fact that he legitimately is just left wing. He's just left wing. Jagmeet Singh is just left wing. I think that oddly enough, Justin Trudeau, in certain senses, is principled. He's a principled left winger on some issues. Some issues he's corrupt and he's willing to do things to get friends paid or because he has a lot of friends in the green energy industry. But sometimes I sometimes think that people call things corrupt when it's just politics we don't like. And I think that it's better to always argue that somebody's politics are bad and they don't work more than they're corrupt, because corruption doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day unless it's actually hurting people. And I think that Trudeau's policies are hurting people, and many of them are not technically corruptly motivated. But who cares if they're not corrupt? They're hurting people. Craig CC, as far as the Green seats in Southwest Ontario are concerned, I'm just adding that are concerned, more mid-Southwest Ontario, I think they will hold them. Guelph and Kitchener Centre are pretty woke ridings. Well, Guelph, I'm pretty sure, is the riding that the Greens have provincially, but they have that Kitchener Centre. No, I think they do have Guelph federally. Regardless, though, I think they're going to get wiped out just from the sheer momentum of the blue wave, because when there's like a big change election, people almost stop thinking in terms of ideology. They just start voting for the party that's the opposite of the party that's currently in. They don't even care that their current MP has nothing to do with it because it's one of the couple Green candidates. They simply want somebody else. Justin Trudeau, Michelle Rempel supports laws against hate speech. Well, Michelle Rempel's not much of a conservative, I would say. She once lectured me at an event on the value of pluralism, where she was doing this thing where to a group of people she was talking to me, but she wasn't talking to me. I once wrote an article that she didn't like and was entitled "Michelle Rempel is Chrystia Freeland in a cowboy hat," which I think is quite right, and there's a reason why Poilievre's people don't really like her very much, to put it bluntly. Pookie5587, Wyatt, Trudeau did a 1-hour Atlantic Canada plea for Canada to not vote conservative, and the desperation is setting in when you're just telling people to not vote, when to not vote for your opponents because they're scary. You're losing. What else do we got going on? Sorry if I'm missing your comments. Sometimes I'm just moving fast. Justin Trudeau, did you see Trudeau cheering for insurrection in Syria? Honestly, I think he's just simple-minded. I'm not a guy like, oh, Assad was the only one who could hold it all together. Assad was also the one who was making everything worse over time. It doesn't mean the people who are now in government there, or at least control a lot of the territory, are better. They might, in fact, be worse. I think Syria is a mess, and I think that people on the left who think, or even on the right, who think Assad's gone, everything's good now. It's like you're really simple minded. That's not how Syria or most of the Middle East work. It doesn't mean that we should be sad Assad's gone, or like Candace Owens is that, oh, so many Christians are going to die now. Assad was killing the Christians too, guys. Was he better than ISIS? Sure, but it's not like he was exactly good, and it's not exactly like somehow we were picking Assad or his opposition. The opposition just won because Assad was terrible in the sense he was oppressive. He didn't have a firm ideology behind. He was basically just a fascist, and so naturally that meant that his government was pretty morally weak over time. And that's not an endorsement of terrorism, but terrorists have a crazy moral idea in their minds that they're doing the right thing. And over time, if Assad doesn't have enough support from the Russians and from Iran, the people who have are on a crazy moral crusade are going to beat the people who are being paid in dollars worth nothing because inflation's ruined them. Um, Yeah, Syria. Mr. Doctor says Syria is liberated by radical Islamists, and hopefully the Kurds and the Druze in the north and south can hold a lot of territory because they seem to be far more reasonable than the HTS people that have taken over. And even HTS doesn't exactly seem like a coherent group. It seems more like I guess just an amalgamation of everything from Al Qaeda terrorists all the way to just socialist freedom fighter type people. And I think they're going to start fighting each other first right away. Corey Stalker says Castro's full name is Justin Pierre James Castro Trudeau, or Justin Pierre James Trudeau. Matt I says, I seem to recall Rempel supporting a drag story time. No. It was worse than that. Michelle Rempel attacked the parents who demonstrated against the drag time story hour. That's where I've never trusted her farther than I can throw her. And the thing that drove me up the wall about something Michelle Rempel did in Parliament is what she did one time. She stood up and she was like, and this is after Polyev became the leader and basically put her next to the fire exit of the caucus because she does not like him for very petty reasons, and he does not like her reciprocally because she doesn't like him. But Michelle Rempel then comes out and she says, what's with all this woke S? We need to end all of this woke S. I'm like, you're the wokest MP. You supported the Cancel Canada Day people. You refused to go to a Canada Day celebration back in like 2020, I think, because of the grave hoax. She wouldn't go to it. And she said, we have to be understanding of Indigenous people, of how they see Canada Day as a racist colonial institution. And it's like, oh my goodness. It's so stupid. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Salty, great position here. I see you called out Dave Smith for being woke right. I'm libertarian, but I swear most don't understand foreign policy and are just like tankies when it comes to foreign policy. Yeah, Dave Smith is libertarian in the way that he just doesn't like the West for not being free enough. And I agree. Is the West not free enough in most countries? Yeah. People in the UK and many countries, including Canada, are being investigated by police for tweets, Facebook posts, and liking tweets and retweeting things. That's insane. But I find Dave Smith does this dishonest thing that the West isn't good enough, so I am basically always going to side against the West. The guy is in favor of, not in favor, but he will justify Houthi terrorists in Yemen hijacking shipping. He's the type of guy who thinks that America's hypocritical because we are not freely trading with Iran and China and Russia. That shows we're hypocritical because we're not free trade with those countries. I'm like, maybe it's because they hate us and they want to undermine us. Maybe we don't freely trade, or we shouldn't freely trade with China because China would subjugate us if possible. I'm in favor of free trade, but not with hostile foreign enemies or countries that basically enslave people in order to drive down their labor costs. And that's what China does. I'm fine with trading with Cambodia, with Vietnam, with Thailand, with a lot of these countries. Taiwan, definitely. I'm not going to trade with China, who would seek to make us their footstool. Oh my goodness. But yeah, Dave Smith was being a fool. And to be fair, with all the people talking about Michelle Rempel, has she done some good things? Probably. I actually applaud the fact that she is very good on social media. She does a lot of Facebook live streams. She does a lot of posting. She's very active. I'm blocked by her because I minorly disagreed with her one day. But it's not like everything she does is bad. And no doubt she's helped some conservative people along the way. But I don't like relationshipy conservatives where their politics is the relationships they have. She's like a big booster of Morgana Orge, this trans activist in BC who's an absolute psycho who attacked, I believe it was like a female shelter for not being trans inclusive. It's nuts the type of people she'll hang out with. Anyways, I'm actually at the end of all of the comments, so I'll probably start wrapping it up in the next like 5 minutes here. You gotta have to get anything out of your system, we can do that. I commend Lightgiver for sticking around after we were sharp with each other on the issue of United Healthcare. But see, that shows that you're built out of sterner stuff than most people are. What do you think of Michelle Ferreri? I quite admire her work on the women's committee. I think Michelle Ferreri is quite good. She's a lot like Jamil Giovanni, where I think that she does a good job of staking out tough positions that she knows she'll get criticized for, but she ends up like taking the positions and fighting to win on them. I think that's commendable. Jamil Giovanni, I will admit, I was even skeptical of him when he was originally running because I saw he's a strong and free. He was the Canada Strong and Free Network president. Not the best. This Canada Strong and Free Network is very red Tory-ish in a lot of ways. They're like conservatives who are like progressive on social issues, or at least they don't care about social issues, and they only care about fiscal issues. David Coletto from Abacus even showed that only like 8% of Canadians are fiscally conservative and socially progressive. That's just not a type of person. So I was even skeptical of Jamil. Then I heard he had only become the president of the Canada Strong and Free Network from being like he got the position only on a 5-4 vote because he was a big social conservative, but he was very good. And so when he replaced Aaron O'Toole, which, oh my goodness, he replaced Aaron O'Toole. Thank you. Aaron O'Toole was the worst conservative politician we've had in decades. But when he replaced him at his by-election victory speech, and this is what makes me respect the pants off that guy. What he did during his victory speech was he attacked Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce, the then education minister, who's been relegated to something else because he was bad at his job, for being hacks and not staying firm to their commitments on fiscal issues and especially social issues, not getting rid of the insane sex ed curriculum in Ontario and constantly retreating on social issues. Jamil Giovanni is good. He's called out the fact that there is a strong anti-Christian bias in the Canadian government, defunding Christian summer camps because they're pro-life, like not saying anything about churches being burned down, all of this stuff. Jamil has been very good. He's been good on immigration. He's calling for immigration rates to be lowered significantly, way more significantly than the Liberals have lowered them. Again, I hope the Conservative Party takes a firm position on the exact amount of immigrants they want per year. I think, and I will keep advocating for it, 100,000 cap on permanent residents. That does not mean we must bring in 100,000. That means that we cap out 100,000. You must still pass a means test, a values test, and a skills test, and you can only bring in so many dependents with you. You don't get to bring the whole family with you. You don't get to bring 6 generations of people. And so that's where I think it's been good. But again, Conservative Party overall, guys, advocate 100,000 immigrant cap, new permanent resident cap, and visa holders, student visas and temporary foreign worker visas for the next 10 years need to be slashed by like 80%. If an industry is truly unable to find new workers, maybe we can have a cutout for that. Fair enough. Honestly, a lot of these agricultural positions where like, oh, farms can't get Canadians to come and like, pick blueberries or whatever. Guys, you know what they should do? Have schools advertise these jobs. I guarantee you tons of 18-year-old guys leaving high school would way rather work there than Starbucks or McDonald's. They'd way rather be getting $23 an hour picking blueberries and working on blueberry farms than making 15, 17 an hour elsewhere. They would way rather do that. We don't inform Canadians about the manual labor jobs they can work. My brother did decking for a couple summers. He made great money. How many young guys know that they can work in decking? All we do is talk about service jobs and getting internships at offices where you do nothing but polish mirrors and door handles. We need to inform, especially young Canadian men, about good manual labor jobs they can get while they're in university, or even as a starting gig that they can grow into a full career. Yeah. Ray says Aaron O'Toole was just featured on Nathan Erickson Smith's podcast Uncommons. I couldn't stomach it. Aaron O'Toole is the ultimate cocktail party politician. He'd be in a running gun battle for that with Jagmeet Singh. He loves to be loved by the mainstream media type circles of people, by progressives. He wants their respect so bad. It's painful. Yes, Mr. Doctor. And Cap Calistanis at 0. Yes, I do not think people should be. Also, you should not be able to claim asylum in Canada because I'm a Calistani. You can't send me back even though my visa's overcharged. I'm a Calistani and the Indian government might attack me. They're not. All these kids claiming to be Calistanis these days are mostly kids who go and take a picture with a flag at a rally to try and make it so that you can't kick them out of the country. It's ridiculous. James Taylor, Wyatt, thank you for your channel. I hope your legal woes are over soon. We're trying and go for summary judgment at some point here. The good thing is that it might be the best investment of my life to get sued because the precedent is, I believe, in the situation, like a situation I'm in, I might be entitled to double my legal costs back. Like ever, do you know we have over 3 million undocumented people in our country, right? I don't think it's undocumented. It's that within a year, there's going to be or a year or two, there's going to be 3 million people who have overstayed visas. I think the real range of undocumented people in Canada is 50,000 to 500,000, which is still a crazy amount for a country the size of Canada. Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at someone's comment about the Canadian government wanting to send over 22 caliber rifles to Ukraine. Yeah. So there is another $2 super chat from Michael Eep here. He says, "What will Trudeau change to avoid tariffs?" I don't think we even have to do much to avoid the tariffs from the U.S. I think all we got to do is just get more serious on the border. We just got to have some drones patrol the border, crack down on people shipping and smuggling drugs over the border. If we do that, we easily avoid tariffs. And the funny thing is that it's not even like Trump is saying, you better secure the border yourself. Trump wants to get tighter on the borders himself, too. He doesn't think that Biden has been doing a good job. So he's obviously going to have more border patrol and tighter watches over borders and unguarded parts of the border. Because all we probably need to do is have drones that fly over it and identify areas where people are trying to cross over. You can probably identify areas where people have a shack or a cabin built nearby to then walk things over the border. We could easily stop the flow of a lot of fentanyl, not even trying that hard. I'm not wrong, like Giver. I'm guaranteeing there are illegal crossers, people coming over the border. I'm not even disputing that. It's not 3 million people that are in the country undocumented. I can just guarantee. If you're counting all refugees and all other people over time, maybe you can pump it up to 1 million, but it's not like undocumented people. We just don't have that many undocumented people in Canada. And honestly, the reason we don't have that many undocumented people in Canada is because the Canadian government is way too willing to give people extensions to visas that really shouldn't be getting extensions. We have an unemployment issue, and for some reason, they keep giving more temporary foreign workers visa extensions. Pookie5587, thank you for the $2 super chat. Any thoughts on MP Glenn Mott's found during spring? Glenn has been probably one of the best conservatives on the issue of firearms. Him and Stubbs, not Jenna Suds, but I forget her first name, but Stubbs, the conservative MP, is very good on guns, and a few other people have been quite good on firearms. I'm not sure if Glenn is actually going to be running in the next election, though. I've heard rumors that he might drop out, and that's not me trying to rumor monger. Just generally when MPs are at the age that he is, and he's not in his 70s, he's like mid 60s. People, I think, every election start to wonder if they're actually going to stick around. Terry Fox says if conservatives would have voted Polyev PC leader earlier instead of O'Fool, we would have gotten rid of Trudeau sooner. You are right. And actually, it was us, the National Telegraph, who even exposed that Pure Polyev had been blackmailed into not running for the Conservative Party nomination, the leadership, back in 2020. That happened. You can even probably look up. Can I see? I guess I can share this. He's okay with me now, but in 2020, David Parker, working for Aaron O'Toole, seemed to basically blackmail Pierre Poilievre not to run in that election. So the article's there. He tried to sue us over it. That was one of our lawsuits. After we filed defense, he ran away. He tried to sue us specifically in this other lawsuit. I'm being sued by the Chinese billionaire Ted Zhou. I'm the one named on the lawsuit, but this one they named Daniel Boardman, my co-owner, with, and he tried to claim $2.5 million on it, and he ran away. To be fair, I think David's acknowledged it was a stupid thing to do this stuff over, but you can read that. It's all factual, with a little bit of commentary and some opinion in it, but like, we had evidence. We had all of the text messages. It was crazy. This is where I often tell people the problem with the show House of Cards, the biggest plot hole is that it doesn't take place in Canada, because Canada is so much dirtier than the US oftentimes when it comes to politics. But I want to do one more plug for that video from Stephen Michael Davis. And then also, by the way, guys, I'm just going to plug my website. If you guys want to join the website, I'm trying to create a data list where in the future on WyattClaypool.com, that if there's a big leadership race going on in any given province or federally, or there's a nomination going on and I have enough data in that area or that province, I can send people emails and give people recommendations for who I would vote for. I'm never going to give the data to other people, because honestly, it makes the data useless, but it gives me the ability to reach out to people. Adam Gibson says, do you have a Substack? I don't have a Substack. The National Telegraph website is still around. I just haven't published an article on it in a long time, because Bill C, what is it? It's Bill C-18, the Online News Act, has made publishing articles useless because you can't share them on Facebook, which is where 80% of people would read articles. It was super annoying. I don't actually know if there's any MPs who are trying to replace Glenn. And I don't know if there's, although in your area, if you live in that area, yeah. So wait, if you live in Glenn Motz's area, by the way, if you're in Medicine Hat, I know that there's somebody running for mayor that I'm probably going to be helping out, just because I think it's a good candidate. And then Wally Daldrich running in Manitoba for the PC leadership election. He's a very good candidate. Wally is a good social conservative, a good fiscal conservative, good man for the job. And I'm hoping that in New Brunswick, Chris Austin, the former leader of the People's Alliance and current PC MLA, I hope that he ends up running to replace Blaine Higgs as the leader. I think that he is, again, an orthodox, across-the-board conservative, and that's generally who I will always support in any election, is whoever the most orthodox conservative person is, who's also serious, professional, and has a good idea for how to communicate politically. I don't just go off the platforms. I saw the other day someone saying, and I get what they were saying. They said, if Canadians voted blindly on policy, then a lot more people would be voting PPC. I'm like, sure, but having a good platform doesn't mean all that much. You actually have to also be somebody that people trust. And you can say whatever you want on your platform. Oh, I believe in doing all the right things. Doesn't mean that people are going to like you or people are going to help you. But if you guys also want to contribute to the legal fund, you can always do that there. So yeah. Have you talked about the fall economic statement this stream? I don't think I have, but I do talk a lot about economic indicators, or at least every once in a while. And then, is there anything else I want to plug? Oh, someone had mentioned Dylan EDU. Where can I find this? Can I find the comment still? Oh my goodness. Thoughts on Dylan EDU? I went on Dylan EDU's channel, and I think he's a pretty good guy. And actually, there's another guy, Max Genist, who does a really good job on Twitter. I should actually plug him. I'm just plugging people now. Hopefully this is not boring. This kid actually does a really good job. He uploads his videos just to Twitter right now, or X, but I think he has a much better looking set than mine, even though he's like a much smaller person at the moment. But yeah, I would go give him a follow. But this is all, I'm pretty much done here. Like Giver said, I cannot believe New Brunswick voted red. I can believe it, not in the sense that Blaine Higgs was doing a bad job. I thought he was one of the best premiers in a couple decades in Canada. The problem in New Brunswick was that I think that the PCs just ran an uninspiring campaign. And there was just a big anti-incumbency wave going on right now. And I think that you don't run on an HST cut. You don't run on reducing the HST by 2%. What you do is you reduce the HST by 2% months before the election, I would say a year before the election, and then you run on a 2% across the board income tax cut for anyone paying more than 8% or 10% per in terms of their income. I thought that the PCs in New Brunswick just didn't run an inspiring campaign. Yeah. Wyatt, Ray says, Wyatt, any thoughts on the conspiracy that the PPC was a vote splitting op? I don't think they are. I think that just Bernier, honestly, is just not very good at politics. And now, the only conspiracy I have is that Bernier intentionally lost in 2019 because he doesn't actually want to be in Parliament, because then he has to perform. Because in Beauce, his riding of Beauce, which he had held for multiple election cycles, he only spent around a few days in Beauce the entire 2019 election. He only lost by 10%, which sounds like a lot, but his main competitor was the Conservatives. The PPC and the Conservatives had like 75% of the vote combined in that riding. If Bernier had just mined out 5% from his Conservative opponent, they would have been tied. Gets any more votes, and then he wins. I think he intentionally lost that riding. He shotgunned all of his efforts across the country and almost ensured that nobody in his home riding would think that he was serious. I'm going to compliment Elizabeth May. She knows how to win a riding. She scoped out for years a riding that she could actually win in after losing a few times in Nova Scotia. She went out to Vancouver Island, to Saanich in the Gulf Islands, which used to be in a Reform Alliance riding. It used to be a very good, very conservative riding. It was an area where more granola anti-establishment politics were popular, and the incumbent MP was not popular at all. People thought he was arrogant and didn't like him. So Elizabeth May put all of her eggs in that one basket and ran for it. There are times to put all your eggs in one basket when you need to prove that the formula can work. So yeah. I think that's... Yeah, Corey Starkiller, anti-incumbency thankfully didn't hurt Sask Party. It kind of did in the sense that in Regina and Saskatoon, there was quite an NDP swing, and really the Saskatchewan Party only won by a couple thousand votes, because if some votes changed in the cities, then they would have lost. But yeah, so that should all be good for me. I think I've gotten through everything else that's going on here. Do I have any thoughts on Claire Raitt? I honestly don't know who that is, but I will look it up ASAP as soon as this stream is done. I just don't know who that is. Anyway, so that's it for me today, guys. See you guys all later. Go and check out that stuff I ended up linking. Yeah, go check out Max Genist. That's the last thing I'm going to link. And I'll see you guys all another day, hopefully a day where I actually schedule a live stream rather than just going live out of nowhere.